Hello, everybody, and welcome back once again to another edition of the SaskAgToday.com Roundtable. I'm Ryan Young, the 620 CKRM Agri-News Director, and joining me is the Chief Agricultural Editor of SaskAgToday.com, Kevin Hirsch. GX94 Agriculture Director Doug Faulkner is currently on vacation. Kevin, we'll start things off here. We'll just note that obviously it was kind of a little bit of a slower week this week in terms of the ag news cycle, but always the thing to talk about is crop development for this time of year. And according to the latest crop report, the sense I got from it was the hot and humid weather from this past week. It kind of was a double-edged sword. It helped out northern and eastern areas where it's been wet, helping crops catch up on development, but in areas such as the West and the South, and especially where you are, Kevin, in the Southwest, it's kind of drying things out and speeding things along. Just kind of talk a little bit about what conditions are like where you farm.
Yeah, certainly here things have changed rapidly. There's been a few producers start desiccating lentils, so give it 4 or 5 days and the combines will be going into that. I see some field pea crops that might be harvested next week as well, first week of August. My maple peas I thought would be much later. They might be ready to go by the end of the next week. Again, the end of the first week of August. That's I have some harvest help that I have to try to tell them when they might be needed. And probably a month ago I said, oh wow, it's going to be late. Won't be doing much until at least August 20th. Well, I've missed by probably 10 or 15 days. Things are far earlier than what I thought. And we've lost some yield and lost some bushels just because of the heat and the dryness. But still, in much of the Southwest, it'll be a far better crop than we've seen in recent years.
Yeah, that's what Tice Massage was saying when I talked to him about the crop report. He heard a couple of cases of farmers down there desiccating lentils, so it's kind of a sign that harvest is rapidly approaching. But around here in Regina, things are progressing along, I think, kind of nicely. Some canolas past the flowering stage or at the flowering stage. Other crops are catching up or maturing, so it's a little bit of a mixed bag. And we had a little bit of precipitation maybe overnight, but not a whole lot otherwise. And I could imagine, Kevin, even a shot of rain at this point, it's probably not going to help things.
Well, there are some later seeded crops that probably still would benefit from some moisture. And in this country, it's hard to turn down moisture whenever it actually comes. Interesting in the crop report that came out this week, where the short topsoil moisture is now 27% of the land, with 1% very short, and only 5% is actually listed as surplus now. So that's a significant change. Also interesting in the crop report, if you go through the ratings for each of the crops on a province-wide basis, the one that comes out the worst is lentils, and I would agree with that. Lentils have been hit on a couple of fronts. One is root rot and a root rot complex and early flooding. You see some fields, especially in west central Saskatchewan, where a large percentage of the field there will be nothing there. Other areas, it's a little more spotty, depends on texture and the lay of the land. Another thing that hasn't been talked about a lot with lentils is that I can point to numerous fields where a lot of the field will never be combined because the infestation of kochia is so terrible, they're never going to get a combine through there. And the lentils that would exist under those thick kochia would be very minuscule anyway. But it's not just a few fields, there's quite a few fields where either the herbicide failed or producers didn't put on a residual herbicide that would control kochia. But there are some real kochia messes, mainly in lentil crops, and that's why lentils are rated 25% are rated fair, 10% are rated poor, 4% are rated very poor. Now there are some good crops, 50% are still rated good, 11% rated excellent, but I have to think that the acres coming out of lentils due to root rot, flooding, as well as kochia infestation is going to affect the supply of lentils and when it's all said and done after harvest.
Yeah, I've definitely seen around here in Regina, there's a field or two that has some kochia, but not to the level that you're describing. So there's that to kind of keep note of as well. Another thing related to the crop report as well, there were some reports of some crop damage related to cabbage seed pod weevil, aphids, gophers, and such. Not a whole lot of reports of Bertha armyworm from what I've been able to read. And today on SaskAg Today, I had a feature with Ian Epp from Sask Oilseeds talking about Bertha armyworms and advising canola producers to keep an eye on that in their fields. Kevin, you have some canola planted for this year. Have you seen any Bertha armyworms?
No, I haven't, and I have to admit I haven't probably checked as closely as I should. You should really pull up plants and bang them on the hood of your truck and see how many worms fall out, or other methods of doing that. I would suspect here, though, with the canola actually turning, that we might be past the stage where we would have to worry as much about that particular pest. But it's something. It's great that there's people out there that understand all these pests and do maps and pheromone traps and can alert us to problems that may be occurring.
One other thing that we'll talk about on the roundtable for this week is the fact that canola prices, both cash and futures, they've really taken a downturn. And just to give an idea for the viewers here, looking at the closing canola cash price from Bunge from Friday, July 24th, canola was at 772.95 a metric ton. And then at close on Friday this afternoon, it was at 706.25 a metric ton. So down by more than $60 and change a metric ton. Kevin, I could imagine you've been watching the futures prices as well, and they've gone down considerably. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, canola futures and canola cash don't track exactly, but they follow pretty closely. The difference there is the basis that a buyer, the elevator company, takes off of the futures price, and that can vary with their demand and how badly they want the product and their costs of getting it to export. So you can see instances where the two don't jibe exactly, but when futures are dropping dramatically, you can bet that cash prices are as well. And the cash prices you quoted, I'm old school, so that's a drop from 1753 on July 24th down to 1602, and I believe those prices are what Bunge's paying basis moose jaw. If you look at futures prices, a very similar drop, actually a little worse than that. The July 24th price is notable because that was actually a 3-year high for canola prices, and the futures was around 836 a ton. By July 31st, which is today, as we're taping this, 759. So a drop of $77 a ton on the futures, or $1.75 a bushel. Really interesting that up until now, every time things escalated in the war in the Middle East, crude oil prices would rise and canola values would follow. Now canola doesn't seem to be paying as much attention to that, and even though the situation seemed to have escalated in recent days, canola has continued to drop. So it's something that producers are going to watch with great interest, and at some point we'll probably all look back, and we may all look back and say, gosh, I wish I'd have locked in and pre-priced more of what I hope to sell this fall. So maybe there'll be more opportunities come yet, but certainly canola has not been going in the right direction the past week.
No, no doubt about that. And we've talked before, Kevin, about you locking in some canola prices around $15 to $17 a bushel. I know producers have probably taken advantage of that as well. But I also kind of wonder, aside from the external factors, if it's just more of a seasonal trend. Do you think that has something to do with it as well?
It could, although we're not like we're into harvest and seeing harvest pressure at this point. But a lot of factors, biofuel policy, the outlook for how much we're going to produce, what's happening with other oilseed prices and soybean prices and soybean oil prices. So there's a lot of factors go into it that people try to ascertain. There's some believe, I know there's some analysts out there that believe that we've overestimated how good this crop is, and our production will not be as good as what some of the reports indicate. And they're believing that we're going to see prices spike and go up again. My crystal ball is very murky. I'm just glad to have some prices locked in that are profitable. I'm not very happy with the $15 a ton stuff I locked in. The $16 or $15 the $16 a bushel price is sort of where the market is at right now. The 17 that I locked in a week ago, I'm quite happy with. I wish it had all been locked in at $17 a bushel, but so goes the game of trying to figure out when you should price things.
Well, your murky crystal ball is better than my crystal ball, which is non-existent. So there's that. One other thing that we wanted to highlight as well, you heard it, Kevin, and I had it on my program today, SaskAg Today, about a gentleman who's a farm succession planner in Ontario. Over the last couple of years, he's been advocating for a change to a section of the Income Tax Act that would basically add nieces and nephews to farm transfers on a tax-deferred basis, the same benefit as sons and daughters should they take over a farm. Do you think that's a worthwhile thing, Kevin?
I think it's marvelous, and it did hit the news a little bit when it came up in Ottawa, and some of the succession planning firms in Ontario raised this. It's a marvelous idea. Oftentimes you'll see, and it's oftentimes two brothers that are farming together. One may not have kids that want to continue in farming, or may not have kids at all. So why not allow nieces and nephews the same provisions as sons and daughters, and allow a rollover of the farmland to the next generation without capital gains implications in the near term? It would just seem to be a very logical thing to do. The fact that it's being discussed, the fact that it seems like it's eventually going to come as a change in the Income Tax Act, that sort of reassures a person that common sense can sometimes prevail even in Ottawa.
And I guess the jury would still be out whether that should something be introduced and be passed and get royal assent, whether that's going to be retroactive to a certain date or something brand new moving forward. I guess that remains to be seen.
I would think they would have tough time doing it retroactively because those taxes in many cases would have been paid, and it's hard to go back and recalculate that and refund people taxes already paid. My expectation is that the change would be just going forward and not be retroactive, but that's just a guess on my part.
And this individual is hoping that there's some sort of resolution by sometime next year. Do you think that's a reasonable timeline for the federal government?
Things always seem to take longer than you would like, even when it seems like a very simple change. So I would hope that it's sooner rather than later. I hope that it doesn't get lost in all of the other things that go on.
And finally, in terms of outlook for next week, Kevin, what do you got plans for next week?
Well, I'm going to take the weekend off and go to the cabin and visit with family, and then got some family hopefully coming next week to finish getting things ready for harvest. We're a little bit behind because harvest has come a little too quickly, and by the end of next week, there's a good possibility we'll be pulling into the first fields of maple peas to see if they're ready to combine. So far sooner than we would like, far sooner than we expected, but it is still always an exciting time when you get the combine going for the first time and see what you've really got in the field. You've looked at it and walked through it and scratched your head over it, and now you get a chance to see what's actually there.
Well, here's hoping that things go well right off the start, and that's a good note to end on for this week's edition of the SaskAgToday.com Roundtable. On behalf of Chief Agricultural Editor Kevin Hirsch, I'm Ryan Young with 620 CKRM saying so long until next time.